Hello once again, folks. Yeah, very welcome to another video from Gun Dog and Fly. And what can I say to you? The response to the last video was absolutely terrific. As you know, I kind of run out of ideas for videos for the winter, basically, whilst the fishing season is closed, and effectively I'm not really hunting anymore. So you've come up with some great ideas. The most prominent being pike fly fishing. That was the most asked for, or the most mentioned, suggestion. And I've never fished for pike with a fly rod before. I've caught some pike down through the years. Many years ago, when I used to fish for salmon, I've caught some spinning and stuff. Never specifically went after pike. I have a friend who's been telling me for years that it's great sport. So David, I'll be in touch very shortly, and we'll get going at the pike fly fishing. It'll be a whole new learning experience for me. I know virtually nothing about it, and needless to say, I'm not equipped for it either, so I'll be depending on David. So we'll get together, David, fairly soon, hopefully. As regards pike, quick story. Many years ago, when I was very young, I remember there was 3 or 4 men here locally who used to fish for pike, and they fish for pike exclusively. They didn't fish for anything else, and they used to go to the river just to catch the pike. And they maintained that the pike were vermin, and that they were a major problem, and that if they weren't doing what they were doing and catching the pike, that there'd be no trout left in the river. Now today I know that's absolute nonsense. The pike are indigenous in the river, and they're part of the ecosystem there, and they have little, if any, impact on the trout population. But these guys firmly believed they were doing great good, despite the fact that they didn't fish for trout at all themselves. And just incidentally, what they used as bait was a frog. And there was plenty of ponds here locally. You just go to the local pond, you'd catch a frog, and they'd kill the frog and break his back legs, because when the rigor mortis would set in, he'd be too stiff as a bait, so the broken back legs would have movement, and they would use them like a spinner. They'd cast them out and they would spin and draw like that, and they would catch the pike. And then when they caught the pike, they'd pull them out onto the bank and hang them up on a tree and let the crows eat them. That's the way they viewed it. Figure that one for me. Anyway, so David, I'll be in touch soon. Other suggestions, videos on gear. I have plenty of it, so that's a possibility. The maintenance of gear whilst the season is closed. Fly tying as well. Fly tying really small flies. That's another good suggestion. I have plenty of fly tying videos already, so this would be also, a lot of the flies I tie are small already, but some of the really tiny stuff maybe. Also, some of you will know that I'm into photography as well. This side of my little man cave, if you like, is all fly tying stuff and that, and the fishing gear. And over here, which you probably can't see on the video, is mainly dedicated to my photography gear and all that stuff. So some people were interested in that, so I do mainly landscapes, and I do a little bit of wildlife stuff, but mainly landscapes. So if you're interested, let me know, and I'll kind of take you along with me whilst I take some photos of landscapes or wildlife or whatever. Oh yeah, Colin, I haven't forgotten you, Colin. You asked me for a recommendation for wading boots. Now, I'm loath to sort of recommend anything to anybody, because people assume that you're being paid by the company to recommend their products, and I don't get anything from anybody to recommend their products. So Colin, these are the boots that I've been using for the last 2 seasons. They're Sims boots now, but what particular model they are, I'm not able to tell you. If you might be able to figure it out merely by looking at them, but these have lasted me for the past 2 seasons, and they're still, to together, if you like. They haven't fallen apart like others have. They've been durable enough and they've lasted. Now, when I say 2 seasons, this season I haven't fished as much as previous seasons because of the weather. So you could say essentially a season and a half they've lasted, which is a fair testament to them. So there you go, Colin. That's my recommendation to you. Sea fishing, that's another thing. Now, I'm going to put my hand up and say I'm terrified of the sea. I had a very bad experience a few years ago on a lake. Now, obviously, that's much different than the sea, but whilst I was out and I got caught out in a storm on a small boat, and it was a very, very scary experience, and it terrified me basically. And the sight of the sea and those big waves and all that sort of brings all that back to me. So I'd go on a boat, maybe a ferry to England or something like that, a big boat like that, but I'd be very reluctant to get into anything smaller. So sea fishing, maybe from the shore, if it wasn't too rough, and if it was quiet and there wasn't too many waves about, I might consider it. So that's something else I might consider. Now, there was, you'll be aware, a lot of you, that I've hunted all my life, and I have shot virtually anything that could be shot, and a lot of game down through the years. Well, effectively, I've been hunting for 40 years or more, 40 seasons, if you like, with a gun. And previous to that, I've hunted with dogs, and I've been hunting all my life essentially, but this is my first season ever where I don't actually own a gun dog. There's, like I've said before, there's literally no point in having a gun dog hereabouts anymore because there's no wildlife habitat effectively left around here. So I'm hunting for pheasants, ducks, like all the ponds are filled in and all the cover is gone. So essentially there's no point. Now, I could go hunting. I have invitations from all over the country to various places, but like, it's not the same. Although I appreciate the invitations, that it's not the same as hunting your own area where I know intimately, and when you're not working with your own dogs, no, I kind of don't have the interest. So someone suggested go after the foxes. Now, I killed as many foxes as probably anybody. I spent most of my life and virtually every winter after foxes. I often shot 20, 30 foxes every week throughout the winter, mainly out at night time lamping them. And I shot them being flushed from covers, and I've killed them in every which way you can possibly imagine. The idea being, of course, that by killing the foxes you were preserving the other wildlife around the place. Now, whether or not that's true or not, because I killed, like I said, and I wasn't the only one at it, this area we denuded it of foxes. We killed so many foxes, and yet it seemed to have no apparent effect one way or the other on the game population. So maybe the statistics won't bear that out. Maybe there's evidence to support the case for shooting foxes and killing foxes, but I enjoyed doing it. That's why I did it essentially. And I could always say, well, then I'm doing it to preserve the game and all that. Whether it's true or not, I don't know. I'm on the fence about it. But as regards killing foxes now, in common with maybe a lot of people who get that little bit older, no, I wouldn't shoot foxes anymore. Maybe if somebody said to me there's a problem fox and he's eating all my chickens, yeah, no problem. But going out after foxes like I used to, no, not for me anymore. So I prefer to shoot them with the camera now. So one more thing, well, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 fly rods. Do I need another one? Yeah, I think I do. I have a plan. All these rods here are little light, delicate dry fly rods, and they are absolutely beautiful rods to use. Each one of them are just special, and I love using them. But I'm planning to buy a rod specifically for wet fly fishing. And I've used some of these rods before, wet fly fishing, and they're okay, and you can sort of overcome their shortcomings in that regard, but they're not really up to the job. You need a sort of something with a bit more backbone for wet fly fishing. So I'm planning to buy something in the line of a 10-foot or 10'6" 5-weight for next season, for early season wet fly fishing. Now I could fish away fine with these, but like I said, they're not ideal. So I might bring you on a little shopping trip with me someday as I try and search out and look for a 10-foot 5-weight specifically for wet fly fishing. So that's another video that I'm looking forward to making during the winter. Now I have a story for you, and I'm putting myself out on a limb in a sense here, because this story, I've told this story to a few people down through the years, and each of them have said to me, oh, you must write this down, you must record this, you must keep this for future generations, because like when you're gone, the memory of it will be gone and all that sort of thing. And basically it's what I'll call a rabbit story. Sceal, coinín mar a dhearfá. And the McGraths, I'm one of the McGraths here in locally, and the McGraths apparently were reared on fast food, i.e. hares and rabbits. I come from generations of hunters and anglers, people who sort of supplemented their meagre incomes and their diet with living off the land, essentially fishing and hunting and all that kind of thing. So rabbits were part of my life from my very earliest memories, and they were known here locally by some people too as underground mutton. When you think of it. Anyway, my earliest memory is my father making a box, fashioning a box from an orange crate which he got from a local shop. And I saw him putting the box together, and he nailed it together and made it sort of a square, and then he attached a strap to either side of it. It was one strap, and it was strapped at each side of the box, and then he put into that box a car battery. Now if you bear in mind, this was the late 60s, I'd think, and a car battery back then would weigh probably more than 4 or 5 times what a modern car battery does. Because of the advancements, of course, in technology, everything is lighter. So the battery was placed in the box. There was a cable attached to one of the poles on the battery, and there was another cable that you would then attach to the other pole when necessary to create the circuit to a headlight of a car. Now there were different headlights of car apparently for the purpose, and this was for lamping rabbits at night. And apparently the best headlight of all was the headlight of a Wolseley. Now a Wolseley, as far as I'm aware, are a long defunct car make, but back then that was said to be the best headlight to lamp rabbits. So that box then was hoisted up onto his back with the strap. The cable then went to the headlight, and one end was loose, and you just one end of the cable was attached to a terminal. The other cable then, you just touched it off the other terminal to create the circuit and thereby shine the light. It's a 2-man operation. The second man then had to handle the dog, or as it was known locally here, the 3/4. The theory being that the dog was 3/4 greyhound, quarter sheepdog, giving it the speed of the greyhound and the brains of the sheepdog. That was the theory, but of course, needless to say, it wasn't true. The dogs were a mixture of virtually anything. There could be anything in them, and but some of them became really clever and really good dogs. Some of them just had a natural aptitude toward catching rabbits in the dark, essentially, and some of them didn't. So they were highly prized if they were good dogs, because you could catch a lot of rabbits, and rabbits were hugely plentiful back then. So my father and his buddy would head out at night, and they would come back with a lot of rabbits, sometimes 25, 30 rabbits in a night. And besides being used for food here, they were sold to a guy called Billy the Rabbit Man, who came all the way from Cappoquin in County Waterford, and he collected rabbits all over this area from various families, including ourselves. Just to tell you how the rabbits were caught, for those of you who've never been lamping rabbits, it's a great experience if you ever give an opportunity, but very few people lamp rabbits now. Besides the fact that rabbits have become very scarce, people just don't do stuff like this anymore. So basically what would happen is, if you understand how rabbits, anyone who's hunted rabbits will know, assume the rabbit lives in a burrow over there in the ditch, as we call it, the hedge, whatever. if you look from that burrow, there would be a definite path through the grass out into the field, and the rabbit uses that pathway to find his way in and out to the burrow. And in the event of any danger, he knows if he runs to that path, he's going to get back to safety. So a wet windy night was best for lamping rabbits because it was easier to approach them. Obviously they couldn't detect you approaching as easily. The light would be shone on the rabbit would bolt for the ditch along the pathway, the dog would intercept him, turn him away from the path, and then the rabbit became lost, and then it was a simple matter for the dog to pick the rabbit up and bring it back. Some of them retrieved them, some of them you'd have to go and take the rabbit from them, but nonetheless they brought back the rabbits, and the only thing that was done to them was they were gutted, they were paunched as we call it, and then I remember them being laid out in the kitchen side by side at full stretch, just pull their back legs and the front legs apart so that they were at full stretch, and there could be 50 rabbits maybe. That would be after a couple of nights lamping, possibly 2 or 3 nights lamping. There could be 50 rabbits, and Billy the rabbit man came from Cappoquin to collect them, and he paid for them because they were being exported apparently to France. And sometimes inadvertently in the struggle with the dog, a rabbit would hinge and snap his back effectively. But Billy the rabbit man used to check for that, because if they had broken backs they weren't acceptable. He'd reject them, and he'd pick up his rabbit by the back legs and shake him, and needless to say, if his back was broke he would hinge and he'd be rejected. But what my father used to do was he used to circumvent the rules, if you like. He used to cut, I saw him doing it, cutting the spokes out of a bicycle, and he'd have a spoke of a bicycle, and any rabbit that had a broken back he'd shove the spoke up where the sun don't shine, thereby rendering the rabbit rigid, so when Billy picked up the rabbit and shook him, he was the same as the rest of them. And that's how he overcame the broken back. So that's the story about the rabbits. Unfortunately, what I'd actually planned to do for this video was I went out yesterday with my 22 and I walked around areas where at one time, even up to relatively recently, up to a couple of years ago, there would have been hundreds of rabbits. I think I saw a half a dozen in total, so I didn't even fire at one. I wouldn't shoot them. They'd become so scarce. Every effort was made to wipe them out with myxomatosis back in the 60s and the 70s. That didn't work entirely. They rebounded from it, but now there's a new disease. It's got 3 letters, I can't think of the name of it, but it's been described to me as a sort of a rabbit AIDS, and it's virtually wiped out rabbits in this area. Few here and there, that's all. So things have changed massively. Things are not going in the right direction, I would contend. Anyway, Sinead Marahaw, that's the way it is. I hope you enjoyed the video. I get around to all this stuff that I've written down here throughout the winter. I'm looking forward to making the videos. I hope you're looking forward to watching them. And in the meantime, if you're not already a subscriber to the channel, consider subscribing. And I really appreciate a bit of support. I have a link in the description to this video to my Patreon page. Any support would be much appreciated. So until the next time, go to Mila Mahagui Osver Kolo Richt. Slán go fóill.